Chris, Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here on a Monday morning. It was a crazy weekend, and among the craziest things we saw all weekend, Florida trades Mike White to Georgia for a player to be named later. What are we thinking about the impact of this?
For a washing machine, I think, Jackie Moon style.
That's not good.
I'm not saying that in a negative way. I was just thinking of the Jackie Moon trade for Ed Monix in the Flint Tropics. Because I'm thinking about how crazy the trade was. It is like it's a trade here. So wild as we reacted. A lot of you people have already watched our reaction, even if you didn't watch it live. I'm looking through and I'm like, all right, there's a lot of people who have come in and watched our reaction video that we did yesterday. I say what I said yesterday. Stunned. Did not expect. Hold on. Expected the move. Did not expect the move for Mike White to go to Georgia. So yeah, it's one of the more stunning coaching exchanges I've seen in the SEC in a long time. Just because I think a lot of the attention had turned to Mike White potentially being at Ole Miss. That was everybody was connecting the dots. Mike White back to Ole Miss would have made sense if they were going to make a move. But as I've said, I don't think Ole Miss is going to make a move right now. But I say that. What do we even know anymore when it comes to this league, right? So I'm still just. Look, what does it mean for Georgia? Let's start there. I think for Georgia, it means that, they wanted someone that had SEC experience, perhaps, and they felt like maybe this was a scenario where Mike White has been at Florida, and maybe he didn't have the success that Florida wanted him to have. But would Georgia trade what Mike White did at Florida? Would he take that resume versus where they are now? Every day of the week, right? They would take what Mike White did at Florida, the records, all those things. They would take that every day of the week at Georgia, without question. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you're Georgia, you'd sure take 19-13 and 9-9 and on the NCAA tournament bubble this year versus 6-26 and 1-17. So here's what I think the big thing is, and you're going to hear this rumored about a lot, and I'm just going to tell you, I have no idea if this is even a possibility, right? But if Mike White were to go out and get a Jonas Hayes or someone like that, I think that is one of those things, where or Jarvis Hayes, right? Like Jarvis Hayes is with
Xavier?
No, Jonas
is with Xavier.
Jarvis is with, hold on. Why am I not? I know exactly where it is and I cannot think of it. Yes, Jarvis is at Georgia State. He's with Rob Lanier.
Yeah.
So either one of those guys, right? If you can get either one of those guys, think about, getting someone like Jarvis Hayes, who's at Georgia State, but both guys
pull the Jim Herrick and bring them both in.
You could. Why not? So I think that's going to be significant, and I think that will give the fan base a little bit more of a buzz if they can do that. I think if that's the route he goes. So for Georgia, I honestly think I'm not saying it's a hire that's going to get you into the SEC title game or anything, but if you're talking about someone you just need to rebuild a program that, let's face it, has bottomed out, I think you can do a lot worse than Mike White.
How excited are Georgia fans about this?
I don't think probably that excited, but the reason why I would say that is what happens every time there's a coaching change. Everyone thinks the best case, like the top name out there, right? First name of Georgia. Who do we hear? Bring Rick Pitino. Bring him in. Bring in Ricky P. Not saying that was ever realistic, but I think that's where fans go when things have been bad. You immediately want to look at the best possible case scenario, right? You want to look at, if we can swing the biggest name out there, who would it be? I don't think Mike White was the biggest name out there, but I think so that from that standpoint, it's maybe going to be disappointing because you always think, in the SEC now especially, I think you always think everyone gets Scott Drew. Think about that, Chris. Think about the report that came out about Scott Drew in Georgia. That was the first name that came out. Somebody said, well, Scott Drew, there's interest there. But think about how that sets the expectations. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then if you're going from Scott Drew to Mike White, nothing against Mike White, but one's less exciting than the other, even if one was never in play. So that's what we always in coaching searches. That's the expectations are set as soon as the firing is made. And as soon as you hear the first name that comes out, and it's a Scott Drew or Rick Pitino or any of these guys like that, you're immediately, from an expectation standpoint, setting yourself up for disappointment. Even if it's a good coach. I think Mike White's a good coach. I think Florida was I don't even say bad fit, but I just think in terms of the expectations, I'm not saying it's a bad job, but it's just for anyone trying to follow Billy Donovan, said from the beginning, was going to be a big challenge. So less pressure. Georgia fans may not be thrilled with it. I think some of them will probably see it as, nothing against Tom Crean. How could you not see it as an upgrade?
Yeah.
Right? How is Mike White not an upgrade from Tom Crean? But is it the jump that Georgia fans thought they would get in terms of going from Tom Crean to Scott Drew or Rick Pitino? Maybe not.
I'm about to introduce some lingo to the show that maybe it'll be permanent to where when we bring it up, our listeners will just know what we mean. I'm going to call this the John Gruden phenomenon.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Because every time Tennessee has a coaching vacancy in football, John Gruden's name comes up. The fans go crazy. And anything less than John Gruden, they're going to be unhappy with.
Yeah.
And not yes. to pick on Tennessee, but just to illustrate your point.
Yeah, it's not even just Tennessee and John. Like, I'm sure there's other examples we could think of, right? But that's the most extreme example we've seen over the years.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know what the reaction is at this point. I haven't looked a lot on Twitter or anything, but I'm sure there's some that would say it's a solid hire. I think there's some that will be wildly disappointed just because they were thinking of the biggest name and the Scott Drew thing got out and everyone ran with it. So, yeah, we'll see. Look, here's the deal. Mike White has to be able to recruit at Georgia. He has to be able to recruit in state, and that's where I think the Hayes part will come into it and those kind of things. So, again, Mike White, in the grand scheme of things, did not do a bad job at Florida. It's just that he did from Florida fans' perspective, he didn't do a good enough job for Florida, if that makes sense. He didn't do a bad job at Florida, but he didn't, from a fan's perspective, he did not do a good enough job for Florida. So I think that's the difference there.
Quick word from our sponsor at the Stakes app before we talk about the Florida end of things. You can wager on sports and win NFTs without risking any money. Sounds too good to be true, right? But it's not. Stakes is the wagering app that's casual, social, made for all sports fans, not just basketball fans. Whether it is by yourself or with friends, experience the thrill of sports betting without needing to worry about losing your hard-earned money. Sign up, use our code Southeastern14. Join the thousands of other sports fans playing with Stakes. And again, that is STAKES. You can find it in the App Store on Apple. A lot of fun. We've been having a lot of fun with that, so I hope you'll join us there. All right, let's talk about Florida. Some names that I have seen pop up publicly: Anthony Grant, Rick Pitino, Scott Drew, Matt McMahon, Archie Miller, Mike Rhodes, Jerome Tang, your client Dennis Gates. Maybe even Dennis Hayes, if we can decide whether he's mystical or actually a person.
Oh, boy.
Dennis Hayes should be interested in Florida if Florida comes calling.
Dennis Hayes.
But maybe Dennis Haysbert even.
You want me to tell you where I'm going to start here, Chris? I'm going to start with Dennis Gates because
because of course you are.
Well, listen, let me make the case for my guy, Dennis Gates, all right? He was in the state of Florida for many years at Florida State. I think that's the issue here. If Florida fans can just get over having an ex-Florida State assistant as their coach, they would be in great shape. But, he's from Florida, man. He knows how to recruit. I'm halfway joking here. I don't think they're going to hire someone that was on the Leonard Hamilton coaching tree because, the rivalry and all that stuff. But you could do way worse than Dennis Gates if they go the up-and-coming route. Now, let's talk about Anthony Grant. I think he's one very well respected. I mean, he's even gained the respect of Alabama fans, who I'm sure at the time was not thrilled with where they were at with him. But I think what he's done at Dayton, very commendable. And do
Yeah.
I have any doubt that Florida will give him a look? They absolutely will, I'm sure. How far it goes, don't know. The Patino thing, and we talked to our guy Eric Fawcett last night. He came in on the Twitter space, and he said thinks there's a thought there that there's a lot of people inside Florida who would push for Patino, but there's also a lot of people inside Florida who would absolutely be against it 100%. And thinks that the ones that will make that decision are probably against it way more than for it. And we have to remember too, Rick Pitino, I think, is going to turn 70 this year.
Well, let me pause you there for a minute, okay? You got an athletic director there who just made a football hire. And I think one of the qualifications was squeaky clean.
So you're going to hire Rick Pitino, right?
Well, not exactly. That would be my point. Florida made a great hire there and checked all the boxes. And so I don't know if we should read that as a template for this. You can even argue what Rick Pitino did or didn't know at Louisville. I'm skeptical. But I'm just saying, between age and that and what just happened with the football hire, you have to wonder.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the next coach, but those are the names you see out there. Some of the others, I mean, let's just throw in all the guys, right? The up-and-coming guys. I mentioned Dennis Gates, but, I mean, there's Matt McMahon. He's someone else we've talked about. Who else is out there? Grant McCaslin's out there. There's a lot of different guys like that are out there. Again, I think it's just how does Florida approach this? I'm sure there's the Scott Drew thing. We talked about the thing at Baylor. I told you, listen, I don't think Scott Drew's going to stay at Baylor for the rest of his career. I think he'll make the move eventually. The one thing that people keep pointing to, and it's been brought up before, not just with the Georgia job, but the Big 12 is changing, right? Texas and Oklahoma are going to be in the SEC soon enough. That conference, I think, from top to bottom, even, with Kansas there and all that, I still think it's one that is going to backstep a little bit. But still, I think that's one where I don't know if that's the move that's made. I know Florida fans have certainly always been very high on Scott Drew, and why wouldn't you be? But so I don't look. Could it happen? I mean, if I'm Florida, right? Like, you're making the call. Not say it's going to happen, but I mean, it's 2022. You're going to make that call if you have some kind of interest. So, beyond that, I think it's a guessing game, man, because this is the best job on the board right now in terms of the SEC. And so there are going to be a lot of different options you can look at. You said, I mean, Jerome Tang, we could mention him for every SEC job available, to be honest with you, because he's been at Baylor with Scott Drew and been there for a long time, and maybe he's ready for the head coaching slot and all that. So I don't have a good feel for where this goes, but I think that Florida will have no shortage of options. So,
where would you rank the Florida job nationally? I mean, it's top 25 for sure, but within that, are we going top 15, top 10? And there's a reason I'm asking you this that I'll get to when you answer this question.
I mean, I don't think it's top 10. I mean, it's probably right outside of there somewhere, but I probably wouldn't put it top. I mean, because if we're saying top 10, we're talking, Kentucky, Kansas, Carolina, Duke. I mean, I could go on and on here. I just have to look at it. But I don't think I'd put it in the top 10, but I don't think it's that far outside of it, to be honest. I mean, Louisville's another one,
Well, Louisville was the reason I'm asking. I'm trying to think who might Florida be competing with. Scott Drew's name has popped up at Louisville. Louisville, I think, is a better job. And I'm not saying Florida's getting Scott Drew if it's not for Louisville. Don't misunderstand that. I'm just trying to think of where this could go and how coveted it could be. And also, here's the other question. Does another job somewhere else pop up out of the blue? Does John Calipari decide to go to the NBA this year? I mean, I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just thinking that if we've learned anything in the last week, it's that stuff happens quickly and sometimes out of the blue. The coaching market is changing faster than ever. The transfer portal is changing this. I would have to think the burnout rates are getting pretty high, or going to get pretty high. The salaries are increasing, and with that, the pressure increases. So I'm just trying to think if there's an X factor outside of just Florida that could affect this. What might that be?
Oh, I mean, there absolutely could be. Again, I don't know what that would be, but there will be changes that are unexpected. Remember, we're still in the first week of the NCAA tournament. There's still a lot of dominoes to fall in the college basketball coaching carousel. So, yeah, that's a good point, and we don't know what they are, but absolutely could be a possibility. Jeff Goodman threw out Mike Miller, too, as a possibility. I mean, from a recruiting standpoint, it makes sense. I don't know if I see Florida going the route of someone who has no head coaching experience.
Yeah, that'd be a jump.
I think it's a risk. Every like I said, told someone yesterday, every hire is a risk, but I think that's a big jump to me, and maybe Florida fans would embrace it, but I think that's an interesting sell. So
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Your phone is always blowing up with info, 98% of which you keep to yourself, because you don't like to go out on a limb unless you're pretty sure about stuff. Is there another domino out there somewhere that could affect this that you're keeping an eye on?
SEC or nationally?
Yes.
Both. It's what you said. It's Louisville. Like, that's the one that I think will cause potentially could cause a lot of dominoes to fall elsewhere.
Okay. Where do you think Louisville settles?
I don't know, and that's the issue right now. Is I think there are multiple routes they can go. We've all talked about the Kenny Payne thing. That obviously would not cause any dominoes from a college basketball standpoint, but if they don't go that route, then I think Louisville's going to get a big name, and then that's a matter of, then what, right? Then you're talking a lot of dominoes going down at that point. Because if Louisville gets a coach, I think it'll be from. I mean, they're going to get a coach, but I think it'll be from. I think it'll be a pretty good name. I'll say that. So.
Do you have one in mind, or is this a gut feeling?
It's just a gut feeling that if they don't go Kenny Payne, then I think that they will. Yeah. Yes. There's my response. Yes.
Well, I mean, we're seeing these sometimes. I mean, you saw it in football with USC.
Look, Chris, if Mick
sometimes there's
the
just something.
Louisville,
yeah.
If Mick Cronin's named the next coach at Louisville, I think there are SEC dominoes that could fall for UCLA.
Okay, elaborate.
I'm just saying. Why wouldn't you? If you're UCLA, why wouldn't you call someone in the SEC right now?
Sure. But who would leave?
I'm not saying anyone would leave. I'm just saying that there will be interest. So
I would think Eric Musselman would get a call.
Eric Musselman would get a call. I'm sure we'll go down the Bruce Pearl route again for the millionth time. I just don't see it. But again, I'm not saying anyone leaves the SEC, but this is one of those things where we also didn't think Mike White was going to be the next head coach at Georgia. So there's just so many different aspects. That's where if someone leaves a top job like a UCLA, then that's where all the dominoes start to fall. So, and I know everybody will say, well, look at the last UCLA coach, or the search, not the last coach. It turned into mayhem, but you never know. Things change. So that's all. I think Louisville's the one, but never discount chaos everywhere else. It's just, we have to remember this. Coaching carousel runs through at least mid-April. We are still way, 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 ways away from this thing being over, and anyone feeling completely safe with where things are at in terms of all that. So,
all right, we're gonna have more SEC vacancies. Ben Howland would be next. It's just not official yet, is it?
No. And the announcement they put out was in no way a vote of confidence. So
That's a mild way to put it.
yeah.
How many more dominoes fall outside that one?
I mean, that to me is the only right now. That's the only other one I would have on my radar at this very second. But I think the elsewhere, I don't have any good information elsewhere that other changes are going to be made. But that doesn't mean they won't. So
Parting thoughts.
nope. Yeah, a lot to come. We're going to preview all these brackets and everything. So just subscribe and we keep rolling right along. So
follow us on Twitter at 14 Southeastern. You can see ours below. Thanks for watching. We've got a ton more content coming up this week. Maybe even some live streams. Hope you got to see the one yesterday. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.